Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. Have you ever looked at a perfect couple on screen and thought, they must have everything: money, fame, love, a beautiful life? What if I told you that, behind the lights and red carpets, one of the most talked about couples in the industry were quietly sleeping in separate cities, writing letters they never dared to send, and that the moment you long finally broke down in tears was not the end of their love story, but the beginning of something far more powerful? Stay with me, because today on Update X24H we are not just talking about scandal. We are talking about communication, forgiveness, and the courage to choose family over fame. The day everything changed did not begin with thunder or drama. It began, almost strangely, with stillness. Outside the media center in Beijing, the traffic was thinner than usual, the morning air colder than expected, as if the city itself were holding its breath. Inside, however, the silence was heavy for a different reason. Rows of cameras waited on standby, microphones lined up along a long table, and journalists sat poised with their hands hovering above keyboards, ready to capture whatever came next. When Yulong and Yang Mei Mei finally appeared, they did not look like a glamorous celebrity couple making a grand entrance. They looked like two people who had not slept properly for a very long time. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his jaw tight. Her posture remained composed, but her eyes carried a kind of quiet exhaustion that no makeup could hide. They moved to their seats, not as performers, but as individuals about to face a moment they could no longer postpone. The room settled into a deeper quiet, the kind that feels almost sacred. Then Yulong leant towards the microphone, and instead of starting with a script, he began with an admission. He said this was not a promotional event, not a controlled narrative, but his real life. His voice did not tremble, but there was a weight in it, as if every sentence had been argued over in his mind 100 times before being allowed to escape. In that instant, before any confession, before any revelation about separation, rumors, or reconciliation, something fundamental shifted. This was no longer about a perfect couple on a screen. It was about two human beings choosing to step out from behind carefully maintained images and allowing the world to see the cracks, the doubts, and perhaps the courage it takes to begin again. The distance between Yulong and Yang Mei Mei did not arrive with a storm. It settled over them like a quiet mist, almost invisible at first. There were no dramatic arguments for the cameras to catch, no broken plates, no slammed doors echoing through their home. Instead, there were postponed conversations, messages left unanswered a little longer than before, and evenings where they sat in the same room scrolling through different worlds on their phones. To their fans, they remained the ideal couple, perfectly dressed, standing close together on red carpets, their smiles aligned for every flash. Yet, once the makeup was removed and the lights dimmed, they became two people moving carefully around unspoken disappointment. Work became an easy refuge. Extra scenes, additional meetings, late-night script readings all provided convenient reasons not to ask the harder questions. Friends and colleagues praised their dedication, unaware that sometimes staying late on set was less about ambition and more about avoiding the heavy silence waiting at home. They did not attack each other. They simply stopped reaching for each other. The most painful part of this distance was that it grew in the spaces where love used to live. The shared jokes that no longer surfaced, the reassuring touch that was quietly withheld, the good night that turned into a brief nod. From the outside, nothing looked broken. Inside, both of them felt as if they were walking on eggshells, afraid that one honest sentence might shatter the fragile peace they were clinging to. In that slow, quiet drift, they did not become enemies. They became strangers who still remembered how deeply they once cared, yet no longer knew how to cross the space that had opened between them. There is a particular kind of pressure that never appears on camera, yet shapes every word, every gesture, every decision. For Yulong and Yang Mei Mei, that pressure arrived disguised as opportunity. Managers spoke of strategy and image, of becoming the perfect power couple, who could represent brands, lead dramas, and inspire headlines. Publicists talked about timing and visibility, about how their smiles could trend and their silence could damage metrics. At first, it all sounded flattering. Two talented people, admired and celebrated, woven together into a story the industry wanted to sell. But slowly, the expectations thickened. Like an invisible cloak they could neither remove nor fully see. Arguments about their schedule were not framed as personal needs, but as questions of responsibility to the market. A simple wish to skip an event and stay home was reframed as a risk to their standing. Even moments that should have been private anniversaries, family dinners, quiet holidays, were weighed against potential engagement and relevance. Around them, well-meaning voices repeated phrases such as, "This is your golden time," and "You cannot disappear now," until rest itself began to feel like failure. In that atmosphere, it became harder for them to say, "I am tired," or "I am scared," without feeling they were letting someone down. The burden was not only external. They started to judge themselves by the same harsh standards. Are we successful enough, visible enough, good enough? And beneath those questions lay a more painful one they barely dared to name. Are we still choosing each other? Or are we simply performing the version of us that everyone else expects to see? It was this quiet conflict, between who they truly were and who they were required to be, that weighed heaviest on their hearts. The night everything snapped did not announce itself with drama. It arrived in the form of a phone call that cut through the tired quiet of two separate homes. A close friend had been in a serious car accident. There was no time to think about who had been right in the last argument, or who had left whose message unread. Instinct took over. They both hurried to the hospital from different directions, carrying with them not luggage or makeup bags, but the invisible weight of all the words they had never said. The corridors were harshly lit, smelling of disinfectant and fear. For once, there were no cameras, no assistants arranging their expressions, no one asking them to pose together. Only nurses passing by, the soft beeping of machines behind closed doors, and the heavy rhythm of their own breathing. When young Mei Mei saw Yulong sitting alone on a cold plastic chair, he did not look like a star or a public figure. He looked like a man suddenly reminded that life has no respect for contracts, ratings, or trending tags. His hands were clasped so tightly that his knuckles had turned pale. His eyes fixed on a point in the distance as if holding back a flood. She sat down beside him, leaving a careful space, as if she were afraid to intrude and yet unable to stay away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was no longer about pride or punishment. It was the silence people share when they are both afraid of losing something that truly matters. When she finally whispered that if they lost someone they loved tonight, the rumors and headlines would mean nothing, something inside him gave way. He admitted he was less afraid of scandal than of waking up one day and discovering that, in protecting their image, they had allowed their relationship to die quietly. That confession did not magically heal their wounds, but it cracked the shell around them. From that night, the distance between them was no longer a fixed fate but a question. Were they willing to rebuild slowly, painfully, honestly while they still had the chance? The secret they carried together did not begin as a headline. It began as a faint line on a small strip of paper in a quiet bathroom, early in the morning, when the world still believed they were drifting apart. Young Mei Mei stared at the test, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and awe, and for the first time in a long while, her first instinct was not to call a manager or a stylist, but to reach for Yulong. When she told him, there were no dramatic declarations, only a long stunned silence and then a soft, almost disbelieving smile that reached the parts of his face that had forgotten how to relax. In that moment, the child was not a storyline or an opportunity to repair an image. The child was simply a new life, fragile and uninvited into the chaos they had created around themselves. They agreed, almost without discussing it, that this news would not belong to the public first. Before any press conference, before any official statement, they would take it to the people whose lives had quietly shaped their own, their parents. Visiting each home, they sat not as celebrities but as children, pouring tea, listening to worries, admitting their mistakes and confessing their hope that this baby might be a bridge rather than a burden. There were tears, questions, and even anger, but also a softening that years of success had never achieved. The secret they carried together became less about hiding a pregnancy and more about protecting a small, growing promise. The promise that this time, they would build their family on truth rather than performance. In the quiet moments when the cameras were far away, They would rest their hands gently on her stomach and speak in whispers, not about ratings or scripts, but about the kind of parents they still hope to become. Reclaiming their lives did not happen with one dramatic announcement. It began with small, deliberate choices that almost no one outside their inner circle noticed. After years of saying yes to every opportunity, Yulong and Yang Mei Mei sat at their kitchen table, surrounded by scripts, contracts and emails, and quietly began to say no. They decided that their home would no longer be an extension of the studio, that cameras would not cross the threshold simply because the public wanted to see where they slept or how they argued. One evening each week became sacred. Phones switched off, laptops closed, no social media, no producers, no rehearsed lines, only the clumsy, honest work of two people learning to talk again. They agreed to seek help, not as a last resort, but as a sign of commitment. Sessions with a counselor were added to their calendar alongside filming dates, a reminder that their relationship required the same investment as any major role. They began sketching plans for a small foundation to support younger artists facing the same pressures, not to repair their reputation, but to ensure that silence and isolation would not swallow others the way it had almost swallowed them. In reclaiming their time, their space, and their voice, they were not turning away from their careers. They were finally refusing to sacrifice themselves to them. When Yulong's tears finally fell in front of the cameras, many assumed they were the tears of a man brought to his knees by scandal. In truth, what broke him was not the loss of image, but the realization of how close he had come to losing himself. As he spoke of choosing family over headlines, his voice carried the weight of nights spent performing strength for the world while feeling hollow inside. Those tears belonged to the boy who had left home young, promising his parents that success would make the sacrifices worthwhile, and to the man who now understood that no award or rating could compensate for an empty chair at the dinner table. He was grieving the years in which he had measured his worth by public approval, the moments when he had walked past Yang Mei Mei on his way to another meeting, convincing himself that there would always be more time. The emotion that overcame him was not humiliation. It was a fierce, almost aching gratitude that he had been given another chance before it was truly too late. His tears were not a signal of defeat, but the first honest sign that he was finally willing to live without armor. Their story is not an instruction manual, and yet it offers a quiet invitation to anyone who has ever felt torn between what the world demands and what the heart needs. Watching Yulong and Yang Mei Mei step away from perfection and speak from their most vulnerable places, we are reminded that relationships do not crumble overnight. They erode slowly when difficult conversations are postponed and tenderness is replaced by performance. Their decision to set boundaries, to seek help, and to protect their unborn child from becoming another storyline suggests that courage is sometimes as simple as choosing a smaller, truer life over a grand but hollow one. For those who have built identities around work, status, or public image, their journey poses uncomfortable but necessary questions. Who are we when the applause stops? Who stands beside us when the cameras are switched off? Their willingness to forgive those who tried to harm them does not excuse betrayal, but it frees them from being defined by it. Perhaps the most valuable lesson is this: it is never too late to turn back towards the people we love, to apologize for our absence, and to begin again with less noise and more honesty, even if the world does not fully understand. If this story touched you in any way, if it reminded you of your own marriage, your parents, your children, or even friendships that drifted apart, take a moment today to send a message, make a call, or simply sit down and talk with someone who matters to you. Because in the end, like Yulong said, headlines fade, families remain. Glowing Star, thank you for spending your time with us today on Update X24H. If you appreciate stories that go beyond shallow drama and explore the real emotions, choices, and values behind the spotlight, please support our channel by subscribing to Update X24H, turning on the notification bell, and sharing this video with someone who might need a gentle reminder about love and second chances. Your support allows us to keep bringing thoughtful, respectful storytelling to viewers around the world. Thank you for watching. Take good care of yourself and your loved ones, and we'll see you in the next video. Yellow Heart.